The destructive and powerful leader of the Dinobots has had many appearances throughout the long line of Transformers fiction, remaining as awesome as ever on essentially every occasion. In this list, we're going to be counting down my top 5 favourite versions of Grimlock in any continuity. To be completely honest, while I am only including the Age of Extinction Grimlock so that I don't piss off the movie fan, he does have a few cool attributes to do with his character. Even though all of the Dinobots only showed up in the movie in the final act, and that they are all basically emotionless and soulless characters simply there to sell toys, the scenes Grimlock did appear in were quite stunning and breathtaking, and outrageously awesome. The Transformers themselves are already a spectacle to behold in the amazing CGI, so Grimlock's giant dinosaur alt mode is truly awesome. Grimlock's Age of Extinction incarnation also features a pretty epic design, and he and the other Dinobots' size in the movie causes them to tower over the other Autobots. Probably the best thing to come out of the Age of Extinction Grimlock, however, was the level you were able to wreak havoc as him in Rise of the Darkspark. That was probably the best part of that game. Following in the long line of Transformers who have rapidly different personalities in the Generation 1 Marvel comic and cartoon, Grimlock certainly has a split personality in the Generation 1 Universal cluster. In the show, Grimlock is dumb and slow, though still has an interesting character arc where he rebels against the Autobots as he quickly grew tired of Prime's merciful and pathetic leadership. He led the other Dinobots in a solo crusade, and though they eventually get back together with the other Autobots, Grimlock was certainly a memorable character in the cartoon, being the favourite of many, and an extremely badass character throughout. Grimlock didn't let down in the awesomeness department in the Marvel comics, though for a different reason. In it, his rebellious personality returned, yet he is more intelligent and eventually takes command of the Autobots in Prime's absence. Grimlock quickly became a cruel leader, eventually causing Blaster and Goldbug to leave the Autobots. Blaster defeated Grimlock in combat eventually, ending the Dinobots' reign of terror, though Grimlock's leadership certainly made a mark on the Autobots for issues to come. He was also immensely powerful in both versions of the Generation 1 tale, his classic Tyrannosaurus alt mode being only one of the many things to make him as memorable as he was. As to be expected from the geniuses at IDW, the IDW incarnation of Grimlock is such an amazing character. He appears as his usual violent self at the beginning of the comic, though undergoes a severe amount of character development after finding himself on Earth, after being uncovered by Skywatch thousands of years later after a battle that went wrong against Shockwave. He attempts to locate the other Dinobots but ends up getting into a feud with them, finding himself separated from them by the end of it. Grimlock then found himself imprisoned by Ultra Magnus before going missing. Finally, Grimlock was discovered by the small Decepticon group Scavengers who found him in a stasis tube. They took him under their wing, finding that the Dinobot had gone completely brain dead. Misfire took it upon himself to attempt to raise the Dinobot back to his proper mental health, the two forming a sort of teacher-student relationship. Grimlock underwent a long journey in the IDW Generation 1 continuity, changing personality multiple times due to the constant damage and trauma he undertook. Despite Grimlock going from the violent and rampaging character we're used to nothing short of a pet, IDW did it again with another unique take on a classic character, and I absolutely love him. Not as much as the next two, however. The aligned Grimlock is a continuity headache, as his Cybertron game incarnation has a completely different personality and appearance to that of his new Robots in Disguise counterpart. It's hard to say that the two are the same character, and yet I'll have to group the two in order to abide by the rules of this countdown. The Fall of Cybertron Grimlock is pure badassery. He's basically the beautiful love child of his Generation 1 and War Within selves. Grimlock is loud, immensely powerful, and incredibly violent. He and the other 4 Dinobots had a starring role in the game, and the player was able to take control of the powerful Dinobot leader and annihilate any who stood in his way. Though being captured by Shockwave, Grimlock managed to break free and punish his captor before discovering his new animalistic alt mode. Grimlock made the most of it by annihilating any that stood between him and his ultimate goal, terminating Shockwave. In Robots in Disguise, Grimlock takes his place on Bumblebee's small team of Autobots on Earth, serving as both the heavy hitter and comic relief for the group. Beginning as an escaped Decepticon prisoner on board the Decepticon prisoner ship the Alchemore, Grimlock eventually sides with Bumblebee and assists in rounding up the remaining Decepticon convicts. He's also dumb. Really? Really dumb. Both versions of Grimlock are equally awesome in their own way, though to this day it remains to be known how the hell the two are apparently the same character. Something about the animated Grimlock just appeals to me. He's absolutely hilarious, though awesome at the same time. I can't quite explain why I love the way animated does its characters so much, but the show's take on Grimlock was nothing short of fantastic.
Grimlock and the other Dinobots began life as dinosaur animatronics that became sentient when Megatron used the Allspark key to bring them to life. After being upgraded, Grimlock went on a rampage across the city, hell-bent on destroying every vehicle in sight, including the Autobots. Though he was eventually incapacitated, the three Dinobots were moved to a small uninhabited island courtesy of the Autobots to live out their life in peace. Though the island would later be compromised on more than a few occasions by villains, the Dinobots spent most of their time living in this peaceful environment the Autobots had envisioned when they moved them. This didn't stop Grimlock from attacking everything in sight, however, including his fellow Dinobots, who he quarreled with on multiple occasions. He's almost adorable, his T-Rex alternate mode serving as an almost calmer version of himself. In one of the animated shorts, Bulkhead is even seen playing fetch with Grimlock, and you wonder why such a violent and destructive character can be considered adorable in any sense of the word. Despite this, the animated Grimlock to me is such an awesome version of the character, I couldn't resist giving him the top spot.
Car and trucks, bad! Car robots, worse!
Not only incredibly tough and old, Ironhide is also a classic Transformers character that has made many appearances in various Transformers continuities throughout the years. In this video, we're counting down my 5 favourite incarnations of Ironhide. No, Ironhide from Energon is not on this list. The only good thing about him is that he is an example of how not to write a character. Anyway, without further ado, let the list begin. Transformers Animated is known for making interesting versions of classic Transformers characters. For example, Bumblebee being a young and disobedient kid, and Ratchet being an old and grumpy veteran of the Great War. Ironhide is included as one of these many interesting reincarnations. In Animated, Ironhide is a young Autobot who serves as the Autobots' security officer. Though he made very little appearance in the show, Ironhide's character was built up through external material such as the comics. However, if Animated had had the 4th season that was planned, Ironhide would have taken place on Optimus Prime's team with a new design based on that of his movie appearance, thus earning him a much larger role on the show. Unfortunately, due to Animated being cancelled, this never came to fruition and Ironhide never got his time in the limelight. From what we did see of him, however, this Ironhide has a similar personality to that of his original self, and also possesses the unique outlier ability of retractable, indestructible armor. This Ironhide is also a real jerk. Like, not Sentinel Prime level of jerk, maybe like right above Wasp. There we go. With a southern accent and tendency to pull pranks on his fellow Autobots, this younger version of Ironhide is fresh as opposed to his older and grumpier alternate universe selves. In the Marvel Comics, Ironhide had quite a few appearances, his character from the Generation 1 cartoon mirrored in his comic appearances. He was powerful, able to take on some of the strongest Decepticons, and even the Dinobots on occasion. He was one tough customer, and his fellow Autobots were sure to listen to him on occasion, allowing Ironhide to take command as they trusted his judgment. Ironhide was not only powerful, but also wise and trustworthy, and many Autobots placed their faith in him. However, Ironhide did not have any notable roles in the comics, serving mainly as a background character to let either more fleshed out characters or new toys take the starring role. For this, I put him a little lower in the list. Oh yeah, did I mention he used to look like this? Well, he did. With that kind of look, I don't think Ironhide would do much punching. Perhaps one of the only Transformers live-action movie characters that I don't despise with a burning passion, the movie Ironhide is a rare breed of Michael Bay writing. He actually had some form of character. Being Optimus' trigger-happy weapons specialist, Ironhide fought his Decepticon enemies to the bitter end, and he did so ferociously. Ironhide was a badass Autobot whose first plan of attack was to either shoot the crap out of whatever was in his way, or to punch it really, really hard. And surprisingly, most of the time this method was successful. Ironhide also has a softer side he doesn't let any of his other Autobots see, though it was evident when he watches over the humans he has sworn to protect. Ironhide was one of the coolest characters in the Transformers movies, starring in some of the coolest scenes. But, of course, Ironhide caught the same disease that many Transformers caught throughout the run of the film. A bad case of death. The movies just won't be the same without Ironhide's roughhousing, trigger-happy attitude. Wait, what's this? An IDW incarnation of a character on my list? Wow, that's never happened before. Ironhide had both a lot of character development and appearances in the various titles IDW has to offer, most of which he appeared in. He began his run as a security officer for the Cybertronian government, quickly befriending the young Orion Pax. When the war came, Ironhide was more than happy to serve by his friend's side, punching his way through Decepticons ferociously. He was fiercely loyal to Optimus, even throwing himself in the way of a shot from a Decepticon in disguise to save his friend. He repeated the same action once he went to Earth, taking a shot straight through the chest to save Hot Rod after they came under fire from the Skywatch. That was after spending essentially all of All Hail Megatron punching his fellow Autobots. No, I'm not kidding. Ironhide punched literally everything. After being shot, Ironhide was killed, though revived by Alpha Trion. He took down the entire remaining Insecticon swarm remaining on Cybertron, before returning to his fellow Autobots in time to stand toe-to-toe with Galvatron. During the run of Robots in Disguise, Ironhide had visions of the future. As he saw himself in it, he became reckless, taking on anyone with no fear, including Prowler Saber when Megatron attempted to take over Cybertron once again. He was also part of Optimus Maximus, and formed a close friendship with Chromia. Long story short, Ironhide had a lot of appearances throughout IDW's run, and still has many more to come, all of them fantastic in displaying what makes Ironhide such an awesome character, the guy being not only a tough powerhouse ready to take anyone on, but also a trusted advisor and close friend of Optimus Prime. Finally, my number one choice for my favourite Ironhide was of course the original badass of the Generation 1 cartoon. The old and powerful second-hand man to Optimus Prime had many appearances throughout the run of the cartoon until his death in the Transformers movie, in which he went out in a heroic way, fighting until the very end. Ironhide had a plethora of gadgets located in his arms that he used to rescue, battle, and protect others with. He was never one to shy away from a fight, battling until the very end. Though his personality usually clashed with the other Autobots who would rather think things through first than punch their way through the fight, Ironhide was listened to by many other Autobots, as they knew Ironhide was one of the most powerful and experienced on their team, his strength rivaling even that of the indestructible Brawn, and his wisdom matching that of Optimus Prime. Ironhide had a long and prominent role in the Transformers, being the favourite character of many. The original Ironhide was one that cemented the character for his various future appearances, and was the character that we all know, love, and remember. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Lightly Salted Touhou. He makes Transformers Countdown similar to mine that are definitely worth checking out. Check out his link in the description or click the box below to give him some love. Much appreciated. Be sure to subscribe to check out future videos, and I'll see you guys soon with my next video. Diamondbolt out.
Megatron.
Transformers has its fair share of awesome and unique characters, but none stand out more than the lovable kid appeal Autobot, Bumblebee. Throughout the years, our little yellow friend has had his fair share of appearances in various forms of Transformers media. In this list, we're going to be counting down my top 5 personal favourite Bumblebees in any continuity. When the infamous Michael Bay movies came along and brought all characters back to life, they didn't skip Bumblebee. Oh no. Not only did Bumblebee become one of the most popular and recognisable Transformers characters, but he also underwent many other changes, good and bad. The most notable is his lack of a voice, an attribute that would be carried to future versions of Bumblebee. Only being able to communicate through radio, Bumblebee already stands out from the crowd of other characters seen in the movies. Combine that with the fact that he becomes the guardian of the film's human protagonist Sam Witwicky, and Bumblebee was all set to be the kid appeal character that he once was. To adapt to the intense violence seen in the movies, Bumblebee also became a con-slaying badass, being responsible for most of the kills throughout the 4 movies, second only to Optimus Prime. The only thing holding Bumblebee back is his lack of a true personality. Sure, most characters in the Michael Bay movies lack any form of character, but Bumblebee's absence of a voice limits his ability to relate to the audience and become the likeable character many want him to be. Even if some find him cute, as I've already explained in my unpopular opinions video, the live action Bumblebee just doesn't sit right with me. Hundreds love the movie verse Bumblebee, but unfortunately I am not one of them. Sorry B, maybe next time don't pee on humans. The IDW Bumblebee was drastically different from any other Bumblebees we've ever seen before. Though somewhat resembling his Generation 1 counterpart in the earlier runs of the comic, being only a slightly tweaked version of his original self, Bumblebee was quickly offered the title of leader in IDW's The Transformers comic series after Optimus Prime surrendered himself to the human forces. This was the beginning of an interesting character arc for Bumblebee, where he slowly evolved into a fully fledged leader, despite his comrades' lack of faith in him. Though doubted by pretty much everyone, Bumblebee remained in command and led the Autobots to success for a long while. Even when he was usurped by Starscream, Bumblebee still led the remaining Autobots to victory, eventually befriending Megatron before dying a hero's death at the hands of Shockwave in the massive Dark Cybertron crossover. IDW manages to create unique and amazing characters in every Transformer, giving them personalities we could have never imagined from them, and yet they all still work in their own unique way. Bumblebee is the perfect example of it, though I think B is best as a less serious character, which is the only reason he's lower on this list. The original Kid Appeal character that began a long line of Bumblebees, the Generation 1 Bumblebee was the lovable and charming Autobot that served as a simple scout for Optimus Prime, as opposed to a team comprised mostly of warriors, and so he instantly stuck out from the others. As a result of his adventurous and optimistic spirit, he befriended the human Spike, and the two remained best friends throughout the entire series, going on various adventures together. Bumblebee is brave, courageous, and willing to take on any danger, despite his smaller size. He was always willing to prove himself and served as an effective role model to audiences. This attitude and friendly demeanor has made him one of the most well-liked characters, being the favorite of children and adults alike for many years. Bumblebee also has one of the most unique personalities out of the original cast of Autobots, as most Autobots tended to be only based on a simple gimmick that was the basis of their personality, that caused them to be very one-sided characters. This was not the case with Bumblebee, for unlike them, he actually underwent character development throughout the series, most notably when he was converted into Goldbug later in the show and comic. Though Bumblebee might not be much help in a fight, his resourcefulness and creativity has allowed him to become an effective and useful member on the Autobots' vast team, and one of the greatest characters to come out of the original cartoon. Taking heavy influence from multiple different past Bumblebees, especially his movie counterpart, the aligned Bumblebee is something truly special. The young and brave scout serves as the main Kid Appeal character of Prime, taking on powerful opponents far stronger than he is and still prevailing. Though beginning in the Cybertron games as a shadow of his Generation 1 self, Bumblebee eventually loses his voice in a similar fashion to that of the movie Bumblebee, before becoming the skilled fighter he is now known for despite his muteness. Bumblebee befriends the youngest human protagonist in the show of three, Raph, who was the only one able to understand Bumblebee, and as a result, the two became fast friends. After Optimus Prime's heroic sacrifice at the end of Prime, Bumblebee was promoted to leader of the Autobots, for a while at least. Eventually returning to Earth after being called by a vision of Optimus Prime, Bumblebee was now in charge of a small team of ragtag Autobots, and was forced to learn what it meant to be leader, trying time and time again to control his team, usually to no avail. Bumblebee has underwent a long journey from the Cybertron games to Robots in Disguise, and it's been a joy to watch him grow and mature as a scout, leader, and Autobot. In short, the aligned Bumblebee is practically a combination of all of the good aspects of past Bumblebees to form the ideal character. Despite this, there was one Bumblebee the aligned Bee just couldn't beat. And finally, my number one choice would have to go to the animated Bumblebee, one of the only Transformers to be a Kid Appeal character and not be overly annoying, at least in my opinion. Animated Bumblebee takes much from his Generation 1 counterpart, being the smallest and physically weakest on his team, though still possessing his best attributes such as being brave, determined, and persistent even in the toughest of situations. As I previously mentioned, Bumblebee is the Kid Appeal character of the show, having a close relationship with Sari, the human protagonist. What Bumblebee does differently to other Kid Appeal characters and even past versions of himself is that he is genuinely funny, interesting, and full of character. At various points in the show, we watch him grow and evolve, dropping his usual inappropriate joke in intense situations for a more serious attitude later on in the show. That's not to say he's lost his fun-loving and carefree attitude, however. He is always trying to prove himself to the others, self-conscious about his sides. He gets on well with the other members of the team, and it is always hilarious to watch his sporadic and enthusiastic character contrasting with that of Ratchet's grumpy attitude and Prowl's silent personality. And yet later in the show, Bumblebee learns to work with them, and even becomes close friends. That and his friendship with the massive bulkhead is absolutely adorable. Animated Bumblebee to me was the perfect embodiment of the character, showcasing what we've come to love about Bumblebee and even more. Bumblebee is without a doubt my favourite character in animated, and my favourite version of Bumblebee. For these reasons, he takes the top spot on my list. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I just thought I'd take the time now to let you all know of a Transformers fanfiction I've been writing over at fanfiction.net. It's a story following your usual plot of Transformers, but with some original characters added in. I've separated it into 5 parts called acts, and Act 1 has finished, with Act 2 on the way. So I just thought if anyone was interested, the link's in the description. I'm not trying to play or anything, I just thought at least a few of you might like it. And I'm open to feedback, so please let me know what you think. Much appreciated, and thanks for watching.
Just before this video starts, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Eddie Joanna's channel. I'm assuming you clicked on this video because you like Transformers, so his channel is for you. He makes awesome mini origin stories and explanations for Transformers character and lore in his Transformers origin videos, and they're very informative and enjoyable. So if this interests you, be sure to check the link in the description to check out his channel and give him some love. Thanks guys, and enjoy the video. With the Autobots fighting all the time and getting themselves hurt, someone needs to patch them back up. Enter Ratchet, the Autobots' sarcastic and skilled chief medical officer. But don't let that fool you, Ratchet is so much more than just the doctor of the group, in fact being one of the most valuable assets Optimus Prime has. Ratchet has had many incarnations throughout the years of Transformers, and in this video, we're going to be counting down my 5 favorite. Wait, why is he here? Well, I guess I'll roll with it then. The movie vs. Ratchet is a reasonably faithful adaptation of the character in comparison to his other live-action comrades, being the medic of the Autobot who dislikes violence. That's essentially where the similarities end, however, as notable by his green appearance, which I have to admit I have grown accustomed to and honestly think it quite fits him. I wouldn't want other Ratchets being green, however. Ratchet had the potential to be an awesome character in the movies, but as I've spoken about before, he fell victim to what I now call the Michael Bay syndrome, in which he barely had any roles in the movies aside from just being there, and then was brutally killed off to avoid the writers having to squeeze him into crowd scenes. Seriously, Ratchet did legitimately nothing in the movies, and even in the comics he was sidelined and didn't have that much of a major role in anything.
Maybe I would like him a bit more if he did more than fill crowd scenes, so this pick is based on design alone, because I can't think of anything else nice to say about the Movieverse Ratchet. The original Ratchet of the Generation 1 cartoon and comics was heavily driven by his original character concept, but as a result was sorely lacking because writers tended to stick only to that. In the Generation 1 cartoon, Ratchet was simply the doctor of the team, and though he had his moments such as co-producing the Dinobots with Wheeljack, he was never the main character in any of the many episodes of the show. Like many characters of the original Sunbow cartoon, Ratchet stuck only to his core character aspects and was never allowed to evolve. Until the Marvel comics, that is. Ratchet had two main roles in the comics. The first came at the end of the original 4-issue miniseries, in which he was the sole surviving Autobot after Shockwave took over the Ark and deactivated everyone, leaving him to come up with a plan. And boy did he! He tricked Megatron into fighting the Dinobots that Ratchet found and befriended and saved all of the Autobots all by himself. His other main role was also unfortunately his death, in which he was supposedly killed in an explosion when he tried to take down Megatron after he was captured by the Decepticons. Instead of killing them though, what this did was turn them into a horrifying monster of death that haunted my dreams as a child and sometimes still now. This was because they were pushed into a portal to Unspace. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. So this left the Autobots with this disgusting Megatron-Ratchet hybrid, and though Fix-It managed to separate them, all it resulted in was Ratchet later trying once again to kill Megatron when he was stuck in the Ark with him by blowing the ship up. So Ratchet escaped death, was brought back, and then died again. And failed. Again. And both attempts were unsuccessful at killing Megatron. The situations that Ratchet found himself in truly showed how selfless and dedicated to the Autobot cause he was, and proved he was more than just the Autobots' medic. The Marvel Comics brought out the best in Ratchet that the Generation 1 cartoon didn't even touch, and for that I believe he earns the number 4 spot. Transformers Animated did this weird thing where it essentially rewrote every single Transformers character, only keeping their sole character aspects. So in this show, Ratchet does an age swap with Ironhide. Rather than Ironhide being the grumpy old man and Ratchet the young medic, Ironhide's a young prankster and Ratchet is a grumpy old veteran of the Great War. And it works! Somehow. He has this real, get off my lawn you damn kids sort of personality, and his demeanor clashes with that of the young Bumblebee, and it's glorious to watch. In particular episodes, we see a really good example of character development when Ratchet, initially reluctant to do something for his team, goes out of his way to save the others, being the only one in the team with any real combat experience. Ratchet is armed with 2 electromagnets on his forearms that he can use to levitate objects, among other things. He also has an electromagnetic pulse generator, but it was stolen by his nemesis of the show, Lockdown. Ratchet and Lockdown have some fantastic episodes together, in which we journey into Ratchet's past to see his experiences with the bounty hunter. A majority of the Autobots' advantages in the show come from Ratchet, for example him unlocking his past with RC and finding the Autobots Omega Supreme, whom he shares a close bond with. I know many might not agree with me on this pick, and I can understand why. This Ratchet is drastically different from the others, even more so than the Movieverse Ratchet. But I love the animated Ratchet, and for that put him at number 3.
Transformers Prime gave itself a small cast, but to make up for it, developed its smaller cast of characters fantastically. The Prime Ratchet took inspiration from the animated Ratchet, though only borrowed his crankiness, not his age. Ratchet is dry and sarcastic, commonly doubting his teammates, especially the humans, commonly shouting his catchphrase at others, "I needed that!"
How much do you lose? Bullshit, I needed that!
However, as the show goes on, Ratchet begins to trust these seemingly inferior creatures, and it's honestly adorable seeing Raph and Ratchet working side by side. Ratchet, being the medic of the team, usually tends to stay at the Autobot base while the others go out on field missions and operate behind the scenes. However, on the small amount of times Ratchet does go out into the field, it makes you wonder why he does it more often. Who knew Ratchet was armed with swords and was so skilled at killing Terracons? Even Ratchet himself notices lack of fieldwork, and so in one of Prime's most memorable episodes, in my humble opinion, Ratchet injects himself with synthetic energon, the Transformers version of steroids, and becomes both powerful and cocky. And I found myself laughing through the entire episode, especially his legendary "Touhou!" Ah, classic. When Prime came to a close, Ratchet was one of the characters I missed the most, and I was devastated when he didn't appear to make an appearance in the new Robots in Disguise cartoon. But the writers clearly knew what they were doing, as they had the medic appear in the Season 2 finale of the show, and he was just as awesome as his Prime self. Thank Primus for that. The Align Ratchet is just written so well, and I'd like to point out that this list winner was the closest it's ever been. But as amazing as this Ratchet is, he just couldn't beat my next pick, which I'm sure you've all guessed by now. The IDW Ratchet, like many IDW characters tend to do, combined all of the best bits about previous Ratchets and combined them into one amazing character. Ratchet has had a long line of appearances and roles throughout the many IDW comics, and was even the first Autobot ever seen in IDW's comics, saving the humans Verity and Hunter from Decepticons way back in Infiltration. From there, he would have a main role in the Infiltration and Devastation run, adopting his Generation 1 personality, and any appearances he had after that were just him as the Doctor and nothing more, aside from being sort of Bumblebee's mentor in the miniseries sharing the Little Bot's name. But as IDW's comics grew older, so did Ratchet, and he began acting reminiscent of that of his animated self. Most recently, Ratchet has appeared in the More Than Meets the Eye comics, having a main role on The Lost Light. At this point in time, Ratchet was beginning to doubt his abilities as a doctor after failing to save one of his patients, blaming it on old age. Thus began a running gag of Ratchet smashing his non-functional hands in order to loosen a few joints to allow him to continue operating. This came to a close when Ratchet encountered Farmer, and the crazed doctor attempted to outsmart Ratchet and prove to him that he was a much better doctor, by doing things such as infecting Ratchet with a self-created Red Rust virus, or by cutting Ratchet's teammate Ambulon in half. But I've already talked enough about that in past videos, so if you want to hear more from that, click here. But both times Ratchet managed to outsmart the deranged medic and eventually best him. Defeating Farmer also finally allowed Ratchet to find the new hands he needed. Ew. From there, Ratchet's faith in himself had been restored, and he has continued to have a main role in the comics, even appearing in the Drift, Empire and Stone series, and showing a badass version of himself we haven't seen before. The IDW Ratchet is what the original Ratchet should have been, containing all of the awesome aspects of Ratchets in the past and combining them into one. The IDW Ratchet to me is the perfect Ratchet, and for that, he gets the number 1 on my top 5 Ratchets. Wow, what a surprise! IDW takes the top again! Do you agree with my choices, or did I leave a Ratchet out that you really liked? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and share. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all of my future content. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next week with a long requested video. Diamondbolt out.